Okay, so hello and welcome everyone. My name is Anton Rhodes. I am the project manager of the Global NTCC Network, the GMN, which is an EU-funded and IMO-implemented project. I can see from the list of participants that we have people joining us from the Caribbean and Africa regions. Thank you so much for being able to join us. The purpose of this webinar is to provide an update on the development of IMO's GHG reduction strategy. And it's also to highlight some of the IMO initiatives, especially projects, which have been established to assist developing countries with the implementation of the GHG strategy. So I'd just like to provide some practical instructions before we get started. I suggest to use Google Chrome or Firefox browsers, as these seem to work best for this particular webinar platform. Please use the chat to inform us of any technical problems. We will try and write back to you to help solve the issue. The duration of the webinar will be around 1 hour, 20 minutes. And during the presentation, you can use the Q&A window to submit questions. You can access the window by clicking on the button on the lower right of your screen, next to where it says chat. After the presentation, we will reply to questions. So you can see here the agenda for today's webinar. We start with a presentation on IMO regulation and policy for GHG reduction. This is followed by a presentation on IMO partnerships and projects. And then there will be a short film and presentation on the GMN project. Finally, we will finish with the Q&A session. So you can see here the speakers for today. We have Michel Arderin, the IMO Technical Officer. We have Mr. Joseph Theichel, Chief of the IMO Department for Partnerships and Projects. And we have Ms. Petra Gassemi, the GMN Project Officer. And joining us for the Q&A session, we have the heads of the Maritime Technology Cooperation Centers for Caribbean and Africa, Mr. Sukhjit Singh and Ms. Lydia Ngugi. So without further ado, I would like to invite our first speaker, Michel, to provide his presentation. Over to you, Michel.
Hello everybody. Good morning or afternoon to all of you. So as Anton just said, I'm a technical officer within IMO Secretariat, and I'm very happy to have been invited by the GMN project to present you some updates on the challenge of reduction of greenhouse gases emissions from ships here at IMO. I will proceed in two times. First, I will make a basic reminder of the role of shipping with regards to GHG emissions. And then I will try to provide some up-to-date information on the implementation of the initial IMO strategy on reduction of GHG emissions from ships today. So first, it works. Some scene setting. I will try to go rapidly through this one. As you already probably know, more than 80% of global trade by volume are carried on board ships. This is huge. You can imagine that without shipping, there would not be globalization, international trade, and development as we know them. So shipping is really essential to the world economy. And among the 11 billion tons of cargo transported last year, in average every year, although it is increasing. It is interesting to note that developing economies play a major role in international trade, as they represent more than the half, actually something like 60% of seaborne trade. So developing economies are really have a major role in shipping's expansion. Here on this slide, you can see, it's interesting, on the graph on the right of the slide made by the UNCTAD, you can see the share of container, dry cargo, main bulks, and tanker in seaborne trade, and you can see that they are all increasing from year to year. So it is a very strong and structural trend because of economic and demographic ground, basically. Last year, UNCTAD projected an annual growth of seaborne trade by more than 3% in each year, so in the 5 following years. However, as you all know, there are uncertainties to such projections. Some were already identified by UNCTAD, for example, geopolitical tensions, trade war, some trends towards more regionalizations of economies, and there is, of course, the possible impact of the recession due to the COVID-19 pandemic on global trade. We expect at least something like 20% drop in global trade for 2020. No region should be spared, so it is very important. And as a consequence of that, GHG emissions from ships are also estimated to decrease significantly during this period. However, the mid and longer term impact of the pandemic on global emissions and shipping emissions may not be so significant, depending on how the economies recover. It is very difficult to make projections today, but the long-term impact may be limited on the global emissions from ships. So what do these emissions represent today? So in our last official study, that's to say the third IMO greenhouse gas study, shipping's international shipping emission were estimated at around 2% of global CO2 emissions. It seems a little like that 2%, but actually it is a lot if we compare to emissions by each country in the world. If shipping were a country, it would be something like the 5 or 6 emitter, something like an economy, like the economy of Germany, which is an important industrialized country. And more importantly, if we do nothing in our business as usual scenario, shipping's emission would increase. Different scenarios in the third greenhouse gas study showed a potential increase between 50 and 250%. These figures, of course, will be refined by the fourth study that is expected for this autumn for MEPC 75. The scenario will probably be less high as we have more precise inputs in the scenarios, but the business as usual scenarios always show a potential increase, and this is not acceptable politically in the context today. Because ship GHG emission, in addition to the impact of emissions from ships on human health and the environment, have an impact on climate, and shipping must contribute to the global fight against climate change, along with the Paris Agreement. And if shipping did nothing, all the other sectors would have to do more, and this is not acceptable for the civil society. So shipping has the same obligation to play its role in the implementation of the Paris Agreement. And this is why IMO has made some important commitment and is acting in this direction very proactively in these recent years. So now I will try to show you, to provide you some update on what we are doing to play our part in this fight against climate change. So this presentation will mainly consist of first a basic reminder of a strategy. What does it? What commitment does it contain? And then I will present what we are doing today and in the following years to implement the strategy. And I will try finally, if I have time, to draw some longer term perspective and challenges that we are expecting to fully decarbonize shipping, which is the longer term goal of our work. So first, for those who may not know it very well, what is the initial IMO strategy on reduction of GHG from ships? It was adopted in April 2018, and it was a real success because it's not easy to gather 170 countries on such a strategic document and on this kind of goal. And it is today the major strategic document on this field for IMO and even for the sector. If you read press article on this issue, you will see that they always refer to the strategy. It is a very important reference for everybody, for government, but also for ship owners, for banks, and for all sectors surrounding the shipping activities. And it is a very important signal to all the industry and also beyond the industry. But it is not an achievement in itself. The strategy is only a commitment, and everything remains to do, actually. So, what does it say? What are these commitments? First, there is a vision, which is maybe the most important sentence of the strategy, is that we are committed to reducing GHG emissions from international shipping, and as a matter of urgency, aims to phase them out as soon as possible in this century. So the ambition is clearly to decarbonize shipping as soon as we can. For that, the strategy identifies levels of ambition, mainly three. First, it is to strengthen the current regulatory framework built upon the EEDI. I don't have time to enter into detail, but we can see that later if you have questions on that. The second level of ambition is to reduce the carbon intensity of ships, of the global fleet, of at least 40% by 2030 and 70% by 2050. So it is a relative objective. It is emission relative to transport work. And the third level of ambition is to reduce on an absolute basis, to reduce the GHG emissions from international shipping of at least 50% by 2050 compared to 2008. Actually, it is a very ambitious goal because if the number of ships continue to grow as expected, the world fleet will have to be on average more than 80% less carbon intensive in 2050 in order to reach these targets. So we have a very important emission gap to fill from now to 2050. The strategy to achieve these goals lists possible measures, what we call candidate measures, on the short term, mid-term, and long term. You can see them. I hope you can read on the right. They cover different domains like development of technical and operational efficiency measures, development on port of different, for example, national action plans. So they are quite comprehensive on what we can do. They concern every stakeholder, and not only IMO and member states. Of course, you can see that ports are concerned, ship owners, research institute, everybody is on board with this strategy. An important commitment of a strategy is also to assess the impact on state of measures under discussion before their adoption, so that we can detect if they may affect negatively and potentially disproportionately some states or some economies, in particular the most vulnerable among the developing countries and remote islands, for example, in the Pacific, which are very dependent on shipping. And such disproportionate impact, if we realize that there can be some impacts, will have to be addressed before when the measure is adopted. So this is very important to have a balance between the different countries and their level of development. And then a revision is planned for 2023. How to achieve the levels of ambition. This graph is very interesting because it shows the level of challenge. You can see where we are today. On the left of the graph, we are at a baseline of around 800 million tons of CO2, and you can see where we want to go. If you follow the line, the green, the bottom of the green part, we want to at least halve shipping emissions by 2050. And if possible, phase them out. And we can see also where we would go if we did nothing. It's an increase. And between, we have a huge emission gap, which we have to narrow progressively. Existing measures that already exist today, such as the EEDI and the SEMP, will contribute significantly, as you can see, and they are absolutely necessary. But what this graph shows is that this is not enough. We need to go further than this kind of measure. We need alternative fuels. We need other technologies that are not ready or viable today, but that we need to develop and that represent at least 50% of the overall reduction effort to decarbonize shipping. So what we are doing now to implement this strategy and to go towards this decarbonization. First, MEPC 74 approved amendments to strengthen the current phases of EEDI. So I don't enter into detail, but what you can see is that new ships built in the following years will have to be basically more energy efficient. And this is strengthened because we realize that we can go further, and this is good. We accelerate the pace of this framework, and we are also looking into the possible introduction of a fourth phase of VDI. For the moment, there are only 3 phases that would be possibly more stringent and take into account alternative fuels, for example. This is, as you can see, if you remember, it was the first level of ambition of the strategy. We are working on it. Then there are other actions, in particular actions related to port, which are also crucial because we need them to decarbonize ships. Ports provide fuels, they can provide electricity, onshore power supply of electricity. They can help save a lot of fuels with port call optimization, just-in-time arrival. And for all these reasons, IMO adopted a resolution to encourage better cooperation with port to help put in place this kind of action. And for example, GLOMI project issued a just-in-time guide to facilitate port optimization. There are other progress that has been made on other actions. As you can see, the establishment of a GHG Technical Cooperation Trust Fund at IMO, the continuation of GMN project, the establishment of a new project, Green Voyage 2050, of the DPP. I don't enter into the detail of all that. I think that Joe's may do that, and we will do that better than me. And we also are working on a draft MEPC resolution to encourage national action plans. Now, we are also currently discussing, and this is very important, on a short-term measure to mandate every existing ship to reduce their carbon intensity. So not only the new ships as we have today with the EEDI, the idea is to make amendments to the Marpol Convention that would mandate ships to improve their energy efficiency, to reduce their carbon intensity, with all the technical and possibly the operational means that they can use in order to provide flexibility, because each ship owner knows better what is possible for its own ships to consume less and to be more energy efficient. As you can see on this graph, there are many ways to do it. For example, better fleet management, voyage optimization, solutions that are already tested today, like wind-assisted propulsion, etc. There are many things that ship owners can do, and we want to incentivize more of them to do that. So there are many submissions that are under discussion today that have been proposed by some member states, including, for example, a technical approach such as the EEXI proposed by Japan and Norway, which is basically a sort of EEDI applying to all ships, a technical index. There are also operational tools proposed by other member states, such as a mandatory auditing of the ship energy efficiency management plan, carbon intensity indicators along with reduction targets, also a carbon intensity rating mechanism proposed by China and Brazil. So we have many things, and the challenge for us is to find the best tool or combination of tools rapidly for an entry into force before 2023 to achieve the level of ambition of 2030. So we need a mechanism that must at the same time deliver actual emissions reduction, be implementable in practice, be realistic, and ensure a level playing field for all ships. And believe me, this is very challenging technically and politically. Because member states have different view, but we are confident that we can find a solution in the following months to adopt such a measure. There are other key elements under discussion, and I'm accelerating because I'm running a bit late. The fourth IMO GHG study that is to be adopted by MEPC 75. First report on the fuel consumption DCS data from last year. I know that MTCCs have worked to better implement regulation 22B of MARPOL Next 6, and it's precisely on that. And we will have the first report this year. Report on the FA4, methane emission that should be further discussed. Also a work for mid-term measure on to encourage alternative fuels, in particular developing a life cycle GHG carbon intensity guidelines for alternative fuels, which is very important for longer term measures. We also expect discussion around a proposal by some industry associations for an international maritime research and development board. So as you can see, there are many, many things. I cannot enter into detail, but if you have questions, we can consider that. In terms of mid and longer term perspective, very rapidly, we know that we need viable and sustainable alternative fuels. There are many different options considered by the industry today, like hydrogen, ammonia, biofuels, synthetic fuels, alcohols, many things. And there is no consensus or certainty on the best fuel pathway to decarbonize shipping. As you can see, for example, in these two graphs, one focused mainly on synthetic fuels and biofuel, the other one on LNG and ammonia. There are different projections like that. We know that we need to narrow the price gap, between the current conventional fuel oils and these alternative fuels, which are for all of them very costly for the moment. And market-based measure, which are candidate measure of the strategy, may become an obvious measure to consider in the following year to help the transition towards these fuels. So as you can see, there is not perfect fuel when we look at their characteristic. We have sometimes problem of safety, volumetric density, complex storage conditions, availability, cost. No one is perfect, and we expect for this reason the fuel mix that to be possibly more diversified than today. And this is the reason why we will need some fuel flexibility and bridging technologies, like, for example, dual engine that will be able, during the same lifespan of a ship, to accommodate, to work on possibly different fuels. And this is my last slide. Sorry for running a little late, but the good news in this challenge is that the sector is really in a collaborative momentum to face this challenge. It has understood that they have to work with other sectors like the energy companies, banks, for example, wider society, NGOs. And since the adoption of the strategy, many partnership initiatives and collaboration pilot projects, including the private sector, have been established. So you can see here on the slide some examples. And one key element is to leave nobody behind. This is of crucial importance for IMO and to achieve the decarbonization of shipping, because many developing countries have to follow in this challenge. And we need to have everybody on board, all regions contributing, and I think that this is one of the reasons why MTCCs precisely have a major role to play in this challenge, and why IMO consider this today. So this is all for my presentation for the moment. Thank you for your attention, and happy to answer to possible question later. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Michel, for the presentation. I think this has set the scene nicely by explaining why GHG emissions are an issue for shipping, and what is the strategy now to reduce those emissions. The focus is very much on implementation. So if the goals have been set, you know, the main focus for discussion now, of course, is implementation, how those goals are achieved. So thank you, Michel, very much. For the participants, if you have questions for Michel, then please submit them through the webinar, and we can pass them on to Michel during the Q&A session. I'd now like to introduce our second speaker, Mr. Jose Mathikel, Chief of the IMO Department for Partnerships and Projects. Over to you, Joe.
Great. Can you hear me and see me, Anton?
Yeah, we can see you and hear you. Thanks, Jose.
Fantastic. A very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to the world. I can see that we have participants from all over, from Belize to St. Lucia to Chile to Argentina to Mexico, all that side, and you all the way up to Singapore, Mauritius. It's great to see everybody here. Let me first of all thank you for being here. Your contribution of your time, even this 1 hour, is in a way contributing to a common purpose. We all know that you are all doing your own bits in your parts of the world. So a big appreciation of the work that you're already doing as administrators or regulators or technology developers or any other colleagues involved in this addressing GHG issue. And thank you, GMN, for organizing this very timely webinar series. And I hope we will have more of this in the future. So today my talk is going to be focusing on what is IMO doing on technical cooperation area. As you know that IMO has two functions. One is developing regulations and policies, and second is assisting the countries to implement those regulations and providing the right technical assistance and capacity building efforts. So my presentation today will have two components: a very short introduction of a new initiative by IMO, which is creation of a new department of partnerships and projects. And the whole idea by the Secretary General behind this initiative was to give a much more focus on implementation of IMO conventions and to provide the right technical support through long-term projects and programs. So with that creation of the new department, we have quite a bit of focus on these kind of long-term technical cooperation projects. And then I will then delve into more of these long-term projects that we are doing to assist the issue, the countries in address the issue of the GHG, among many other projects. But I will be focusing more on the GHG-related projects. So this department basically will have four functions. The one is to develop partnerships. We do need all types and all kinds of partnerships around the world, because no single entity, no human being alone can do this huge challenge. So we need to develop those partnerships and networks around the world to address this common issue. We also need to mobilize resources as much as we can. And from IMO's perspective, this is to mobilize resources to support our countries in the technical cooperation side. We are also will have some role in advocating and promoting innovation out there, because we do need, and this is the time for creating new solutions, and we need to encourage that. And finally, and which is a very important function of the department, is implementing the projects. That means executing the projects in partnership with the countries who are participating in these programs. So this department has been there for the last 2 or 3 months, since March. And this is going to give a new dimension and taking IMO's efforts to a next level in terms of supporting our member states. Let me go to the next slide. So I'm now going to focus quite, in a short way, on some of the projects that we are implementing on GHG emissions. The first project I would like to highlight was a project that was just concluded, but it was so important to lay the foundation of our work in building capacity in our countries. And this is called the GEF UNDP IMO Global Maritime Energy Efficiency Project, which started a few years back, which was the very first or modest beginning of IMO in addressing climate change issues and energy efficiency in the maritime sector. And we had a number of countries took a lead role, and we called the lead pilot countries. And you can see all those countries there who have done very well in looking into the legal and policy reforms in the countries. So the aim of the project was focusing on legal policy reforms, so domesticating the IMO MAP Annex 6 into their local legislations, capacity building and knowledge sharing, and also private sector partnerships. It came up with a number of emission toolkits, be it ship or port, Some of the toolkits that you might want to download from the GLOMI website, very useful tool if you were to do emissions assessment, etc., in your ports or on the shipping industry. There were many other activities. I'm not going into the details on that on the GLOMI project. But during the project, something very interesting happened. We have also launched the Global Industry Alliance for Low Carbon Shipping under this GLOMI project. Basically, a number of like-minded industry champions came forward and say, okay, let's sit around a table, let's discuss what is the immediate and urgent hurdles and challenges that we can probably contribute to develop solutions. And that was a drive behind this. That is growing now. That particular group of industries around the table is growing. But initially it was a few companies who came together. Now it has become a much bigger. And you can see some of the companies who are already participating in this Global Industry Alliance, and some of the names will be very familiar to you. Some of the logos you can see, and they are bringing resources from their side. They are bringing the time, they're bringing the ideas, and they are looking into solutions, how collectively they can support building solutions. Now, and we are very happy with how it is progressing. Another project on the sides I would like to mention is a project that we have started to address the hull fouling. As you know, the ship's hulls get fouled through growing organisms growing on that, and that increase the drag and increases the fuel consumption, because you don't want the ship's hulls get fouled. And that is on the energy efficiency side of it, but it has a main objective of also reducing invasive species, but it serves two purposes. If we can reduce it, we can also save the energy, and that project is also going on. And a number of countries are participating in the project in developing measures to tackle fouling, and also to employ technologies to reduce the fouling, which will then contribute to the reduction of emission from the shipping. Now, the project that you'll be hearing more about today from other colleagues is this concept, and that we have initiated and implemented, establishing a global network of maritime technology cooperation centers. And this concept started when we started thinking that, look, we need to amplify the impact that we are creating, and the amplification is only possible through networks. We need to build this network, so if you do something, the results will be also somewhere else. So, and these network then can start communicating and collaborating and build a much bigger impact from the limited input that we are creating. And that was the idea behind creating this network, and that led to European Union showing an interest and supporting this in a very big way, which assisted us establishing the centers around the world. And that proved to be you'll be hearing more about it, but the concept, as I mentioned, was establish the centers, and eventually we could even think about sub-centers, so that we can have a huge network at a global level, who are all serving the same purpose, that is promoting technology cooperation, promoting technology transfer, promoting solutions to address the climate change issues, and especially addressing GHG reduction from shipping. Of course, the centers might think of other areas as well, but that was the initial objective of creating those centers. And thanks to European Union for the very generous funding they gave for IMO to establish those centers. Now, this is the latest project that we have, and we call it very passionately as the Green Voyage 2050 project. As you can see, it has a 2050 there in the name, which means that we have a long goal to it. That means we are, this project is there to support the IMO GHG strategy, which has a 2050 target and ambitions. So this project, in a way, is a parallel voyage together in support of the GHG strategy that IMO has, with a view to support implementation of the strategy in whatever way IMO can, assisting developing countries, and especially the small island development states and the least developed countries, to build the right capacity and to have the right solutions to address the issue. It is supported by Government of Norway, and we just kickstarted the project, and you will hear more of this project in the near future. We will be doing similar seminars. The focus of that project is, in a way, somewhat similar to the GLOMEEP in many aspects, where we encourage and assist countries to develop legislations and policies, because we do need them, and to build capacity through training, etc., and developing tools. But most importantly, in this phase, in this Green Voyage, we will be looking for more technology solutions, technology cooperation, innovation, and demonstration of pilot technologies. And this will lead us to the next level. In a way, it is a vertical expansion of the GLOMEEP project, which focused on legislation policies. And then we have now created the GMN centers, the MTCCs, who are enabled to look into technology transfer. And then with the Green Voyage, we'll be focusing a lot more on facilitating technology creation and technology cooperation and demonstration of technologies. And hopefully this will go for a longer time. And we are expanding horizontally from the GLOMEEP by adding new countries to look into legislations and policies. So I will leave the project there. And in the interest of the time, I'm not going to speak too much about these projects. There will be more webinars on this project, so please keep a space on this. But especially, please keep an eye on this Maritime Innovation Forum that we would be doing sometimes early next year, which will bring the latest technology and solutions development together to share information on R&D and technology development. And we are doing that with Norwegian and UNEP support, and we hope to do that early next year. We were planning to do that this year, but obviously we could not do it this year. So please keep an eye on that. And I would like to conclude here. I didn't want to go into too many of other projects that we do. In fact, the department is implementing a number of other projects on sustainability and also supporting projects on safety and security areas of IMO. But we are hoping that we will be able to expand the portfolio of projects dealing with climate change, because that is so urgent to address. We are discussing with the donors on big scale projects in many regions, including Asia. We are discussing with donors on implementing very dedicated training programs for the SITs and the LDCs on GHG strategy. And if everything goes well, we will have many more projects coming into the portfolio of GHG emissions, addressing GHG emissions. So let me conclude by saying that the challenges appear to be significant, but they are not insurmountable. A lot of progress is being made, but what all we need is good partnerships and intelligent use of resources. And through such a good partnerships and network, we can win the battle. And I would like to once again say, all of you contribute to the efforts, and you are all part of this network in one way or other. So please continue that good work. We need that. We need to develop more relationships, more networks, and more such projects, including projects such as the GMN, and expand the network and do a lot more so that we can together address this issue of climate change, which we it's a responsibility on all of us to do. So with that, let me thank you once again for your time and listening to me. And Anton, I pass it on to you, and that's my email. If anybody wishes to contact me directly, I'll be happy to provide any answers. But I'm here till the end for a Q&A. Thank you very much, Anton.
Fantastic. Jose, thank you very much for your presentation, and great to hear about some of the wider IMO initiatives to support the GHG reduction strategy. Jose will be joining us for the Q&A session, so please submit to us any questions that you might have about the work of the new IMO department. What I'd like to do now is introduce a short IMO film which focuses on the work of the GMN project in the Pacific region. But the film is also a nice introduction to explain what is the project and how it is helping countries with GHG reduction. I should add that when the film was made, the GMN project consisted of 5 regional centres, but recently one of the regional centres covering Latin America is no longer linked to the project. However, we are looking at ways to ensure that Latin American countries can still participate and benefit from the GMN project. The film is about 10 minutes in duration, so please get comfortable and enjoy.
Cutting greenhouse gas emissions from shipping and ports relies heavily on energy efficiency and low-carbon technologies. The GMN project, funded by the European Union and implemented by IMO, is tackling this head-on. The project has established a global network of 5 carefully targeted regional maritime technology cooperation centres, or MTCCs. They're helping developing countries make substantial savings by improving their shipping and port operations. This is a global project and it's having an impact in all 5 regions.
Climate change has no borders. It is a global issue and only globally can be tackled.
To get a real feel of exactly how it's making a difference, we visited the Solomon Islands to find out in detail just what impact it's having there. Now, in the shipping and port industries, estimates say that emissions could be reduced by as much as 75% just by doing things a little bit differently and using technologies that already exist. Aranda Kotelawala is the Chief Executive Officer of the Solomon Islands Port Authority. Aranda and his team are working closely with the MTCC Pacific on a whole range of energy-saving measures. Hi, Aranda.
Hi, good to meet you.
Great to meet you too. Great to meet you too. So, you're going to show us around the port now. Show us some of the things you're doing differently here to try and save fuel, save money, and make the whole thing more efficient.
Absolutely. Actually, let's take a walk around the port, and I'll show you actually what things.
Let's go. Do I need this?
You need this extra.
Cool. Let's go. Here in the capital, Honiara, MTCC Pacific has helped carry out a full energy audit of the port so they can plan where savings can be made. And one of the most important areas is the lighting.
This is the new 30-meter LED lighting poles we installed.
They're replacing all the existing port lights with new, taller and brighter LED lighting powered by solar panels. Perimeter lighting to comply with IMO's port security regulations is also solar powered, and they're giving back to the community by powering some of the street lighting too. This shed roof will also be covered with solar panels to provide power for day-to-day operations in the port. And of course we simply had to come back to see the lights in action, and that means at night. And as you can see, it's pretty impressive. Here in Honiara, the savings actually begin as soon as the trucks enter the port area. Now that truck that's just driven into the port has been through a weighing in motion system. Now weighing the trucks and their containers while they're moving means they don't have to spend time waiting with their engines running for the containers to be weighed. Now that both helps cut down greenhouse gas emissions and it improves air quality in the port. By moving containers around the port with these lightweight trailers, they minimise use of the heavy lift units, which are really fuel thirsty. Even something as simple as repairing cracked and broken road surfaces in the port can make a big difference. Vehicles don't have to rev their engines to get through the ruts and the potholes. Honiara is the main trade port of the Solomon Islands, but there's also a big commercial fishing operation based on one of the other islands. If you eat canned tuna, there's every chance it might have come from here. We're in the port of Noro on the island of New Georgia in the Solomon Islands, and I'm going to meet Glenn Joshua, who's the Energy Efficiency Manager for the Port Authority, to find out how the MTCC project has been helping them here.
Hi, Lee.
Good to meet you.
Yeah, pleased to meet you too.
So Glenn, this is a major tuna port. Can you tell us how it works, how all the parts fit together?
Yeah, thanks, Lee. The fish actually is being caught in Solomon Islands waters and then brought in by ships into the port of Noro, and then the fish is discharged from the ships and then put into the containers, into the reefer containers, and ready for shipment into Europe and other parts of the world.
The reefer containers, they need power, obviously. So what do you use to generate the power for the reefer containers?
Currently, we are using conventional power, which is fossil fuel. Eventually, our thoughts are build a 1 megawatt solar farm here that will help us save energy and to power these reefer containers.
So we've seen some great examples of how the MTCC project is helping the ports in the Solomon Islands to improve their energy efficiency and make savings. But the ship owners want to get in on the act too. Let's go and meet a couple. So Simon, you're participating in the MTCC project by providing fuel consumption data from your ships. Now, why is that important?
Yeah, it is important for me. In this part of the world, Solomon Islands, fuel is very expensive. And if I can save money on fuel, then it will be a great advantage for me.
So explain how that works. How does providing data actually help you to make savings?
Collecting fuel consumption data on board our vessels, and then we supply this fuel consumption data to the MTCC team. And then the team will analyze the data and they will provide us with the technical recommendations on the efficiency and fuel consumption.
Okay, that's great. So the project is providing practical assistance to local ship owners here in the Solomon Islands to help them become more energy efficient and save money.
The local ship owners also recognise the environmental gains. This is Joy, and she heads a family business running one of the largest inter-island trading vessels.
MTCC has given us a new learning opportunity, a new learning curve to manage our operation efficiently and also to look after the environment that we serve in.
There's a clear link between energy efficiency and addressing climate change. Basically, the more energy efficient you are, the less fuel you burn, and that means your greenhouse gas emissions are reduced.
In the Solomon Islands, we saw for ourselves exactly how the GMN project is really helping to improve energy efficiency there. But that's just one example. It's the same story throughout the entire GMN network. MTCC Caribbean, for example, is coordinating regional efforts in 2 pilot projects. One, to establish a baseline and cost-benefit analysis for different energy efficiency technologies, and the other, a system for collecting fuel consumption data. There's a similar focus at MTCC Latin America. They've organised several workshops throughout the entire region for maritime authorities and others. MTCC Asia is developing a software tool to help ships' crews record fuel consumption and working on ways of optimising the angle at which ships float in the water, known as trim, to improve their performance. And in Africa, the project has developed standardised e-forms for tablets, enabling ships' crews to input key consumption parameters to be processed and analysed. World leaders, including UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, have identified climate change as the defining issue of our time. The GMN project is one example of how a collaborative global initiative can translate into local action and make a real difference.
Okay, so I hope everyone enjoyed the film, and as I mentioned earlier, we have on this webinar the heads of MTCC Caribbean and also MTCC Africa. So if you have any questions about these regional centres, then please submit them through the webinar. We're now coming to our last presentation before the Q&A. And presenting is the GMN Project Officer, Miss Petra Gazemi. Over to you, Petra.
Thank you, Anton. And hello, everyone. And thank you all so much again for joining the webinar. So the film you just saw focused mainly on MTCC work in the Pacific. And with this presentation, I will highlight some of the broader GMN achievements. And I'll also focus on the type of services now provided by MTCCs. Okay, so I will stay for a little moment on this first slide because it beautifully illustrates that GMN is a network. The text is quite small. I hope you can all see it. So first of all, one of the key GMN success stories is that the centers have established strong regional networks through interactions with port and maritime authorities, private ports, shipping agents, cruise lines, and so on. And through this kind of outreach, and also through the establishment of industry and government focal points across their regions, their influence has grown, and they are becoming important regional players in the field of maritime and GHG issues. The centers are also working towards supporting existing regional strategies, for example, through engaging with other centers and looking for synergies and areas where they can strengthen their partnerships for the benefit of the whole region. And secondly, there is also deep connectivity at the global level through the collaboration between MTCCs in areas such as pilot projects, technology transfer, future sustainability. And in this way, for example, Asia is linked with Africa, Pacific is linked with Caribbean, and so forth. As you saw in the film now, the focus of the GMN has not only been on vessels. MTCCs have also worked with selected ports to help make energy efficiency improvements. In the film, we saw examples of the work being undertaken in Pacific, but similar audits were also undertaken in Africa at the ports of Mombasa and Douala. And both the Pacific and Africa audits are good examples of how the best practices were implemented and will not only help to streamline operational costs, but also reduce GHG emissions. So let's move on to the capacity building. Since the centers became operational in 2017, over 50 capacity building activities have been delivered, with 2,400 attendees from various parts of the maritime sector, and there was over 30% female participation. And the main goal and outcome of all these workshops is improved capability of the maritime stakeholders to develop and adopt standards for more sustainable shipping. Another notable achievement is the development of a strong technical expertise by the MTCCs. A few months ago, all MTCCs completed their pilot projects, and that included two main components: the collection and analysis of ship fuel consumption data and technology transfer. So under the ship fuel consumption data projects, stakeholders were informed on technologies and a data baseline was created. And the ship operators could then evaluate how energy efficiency improvements can be made. And a great example of this is Caribbean, where in the end, close to 23,000 data sets were collected and analyzed. And what is the result? Well, this particular data collection resulted in many firsts in the Caribbean region, such as creation of the first energy efficiency operational index baseline, the first greenhouse gas baseline, the first online voluntary reporting system for the region, and so on. So many firsts in the region as a result of this particular MTCC Caribbean pilot project. Under the technology transfer component, the MTCCs have promoted the uptake of low carbon technologies and operations. For example, MTCC Asia, by using machine learning, satellite communication, and data processing technologies, they've been instrumental in improving ship trim optimization and circulated the new guidance to thousands of vessels. All MTCCs have also developed technology needs assessments. They highlight technology demand and availability in particular country. And these assessments then help the regions to outline a regional approach for the uptake and diffusion of energy efficient technologies. Now, one of the great success stories of the GMN has been its expansion. The MTCC Asia team established branch offices in Cambodia and Myanmar, and MTCC Pacific launched a Samoan branch office in 2019. And since their launch, the branch offices have been involved in organizing various technical workshops, supporting pilot projects, carrying out online courses, and other related activities. Now, what are the services that the centers can offer to the region? Based on almost 4 years of successful operations, they now have the experience and technical know-how, and they are able to, for example, deliver capacity building activities, manage and implement similar projects planned within the region, identify potential project opportunities for optimizing energy efficiency in the sector, provide technical services related to maritime climate action, and also provide advisory services and access to MTCC's data banks. So what is next? Now, focusing on the immediate future of the GMN project, in 2020, the main focus of the MTCCs is now to disseminate the results of the pilot project. For example, producing new guidance materials and sharing recommendations to improve vessel performance. Another key area of focus is to encourage technology transfer through delivery of regional conferences and technology exhibitions. And here, the purpose is to provide a platform for technology providers to reach out to the respective regions. And on this topic, we would love to hear from technology providers who might be interested to participate. So if we have some present at this webinar, please do drop us a line to find out more information. Now, focus on MARPL Annex 6, the MTCCs will continue their capacity building work through national workshops and technical training. But of course, and this is the case everywhere, I suppose, all of these plans have now been impacted by the global pandemic. And to mitigate against the pandemic, the centers are now implementing plans to deliver activities remotely. And the bigger events, these are being put back to 2021. So there is still a chance to deliver them as originally planned. And another key part of the MTCC's 2020 work program is to implement plans for financial sustainability. The current financial model, based on EU contributions, is scheduled to end in 2021. So we expect that in the future, the funding model will adapt from having a single revenue stream to multiple revenue streams. And key amongst this new financial model will be funds that can be generated from MTCCs themselves. And as I have already described a moment ago, the centers are now well positioned to provide a range of services. To conclude, I would like to emphasize 2 points. The first is that MTCCs are now well established and respected in their regions. They have strong technical expertise and a proven track record of successful delivery. And the second point is that these MTCCs are now perfectly positioned to support and potentially partner with other regional and global initiatives. So MTCCs are open for business. And on this point, I encourage everyone to work with MTCCs and use this great resource that has now been established. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. To find out more about the GMN, please visit our dedicated website at gmn.imo.org. Or this is the GMN Project Coordination Unit. And if you have any queries, you can also email us at gmn@imo.org. Thank you once again for your attention. Anton, over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Petra. And I think with the presentation and also the film, everyone has a much clearer picture of the type of work that's been undertaken by the NTCCs. So thank you very much for that. We now move to the Q&A session. So you can see on your screens the list of panel members that we have here. Throughout the webinar, we've been receiving questions, so thank you very much for those who've submitted. If you've not done so already, there's still an opportunity to send us questions. So you know, please don't hold back if you have any questions for the panel members, we'd really be happy to receive them from you. At this moment, I'll invite the other panel members to turn on their cameras and to join the panel. And then I can start reading out the questions which have been submitted. So we have Captain Singh, welcome. And we have Lydia from MTC Africa, welcome Lydia. And we have back Joseph Theichel, and we have as well Michelle joining us from IMO. So thank you all for joining us. So let me start with the first question, and Michelle, I will direct this one to you. Can you explain why IMO calculate emissions based on consumpted ship fuel? Is this a good method for calculating emissions? Sorry, Michelle, you're still on mute. Yeah.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you for this question. It's interesting indeed. Actually, the third and even the fourth IMO GHG study that is expected to be published soon use mainly two methods. First, there is what we call the top-down method that uses the fuel oil consumption of ships, provided in particular by the International Energy Agency, as said in the question. But there is also another method which we call the bottom-up method, which uses the activity of the ships, provided in particular through the AIS data, the Automatic Identification System. And through the AIS data, the analyzers can can estimate the fuel oil consumption, and then through carbon emission factors, they can estimate the GHG emissions from ships. And actually, the robustness of these two methods is ensured through their comparison. The analyzer compare the different results and explain the discrepancies in the studies. And generally, I don't remember very well the details, but they show similar trends, and therefore they are quite robust. And I think that in the fourth IMO GHG study, that is still under progress, under development, what is interesting is that I think we will have an improved bottom-up method because since 2012 we have much better AIS data. So I think that it would be interesting to compare further the robustness of the two methods with improved AIS data. I hope it helps.
That's great, Michelle. Would anyone else like to add anything? Okay, we'll move to the next question, and thank you, Michelle. Jose, I believe this question is directed for you. It says, with all the forthcoming and existing projects based around the reduction of emissions, what is being done to ensure collaboration among the projects to reduce duplication of efforts and to ensure the efficient use of resources? Sorry, Jose, you just need to unmute.
Okay. Can you hear me? Thank you. Always forget that. Thank you very much for that good question. There are two angles to it. One is, how do IMO ensures cooperation or synergy between or among the projects that we are embarking on right now and what is in the pipeline? And then how do we ensure synergy among all the projects around the world? Because it's not just IMO doing, and other agencies and other initiatives are out there. And be it the private sector, be it the new establishment of centers, R&D centers, and all kinds of projects are either ongoing or being proposed. So it is extremely important to make sure the resources are streamlined and cleverly used and we don't duplicate. So within IMO, what we are trying to do is the forthcoming projects, such as the Green Voyage, which is kickstarting, is making strategic links with the GMN project and trying to establish those links. And in a way, the Green Voyage project is probably a much longer term, until 2050 kind of an aim, and we are trying to connect all what IMO does to that kind of a voyage together towards the goal. And we will continue to explore opportunities to synergize these within IMO. But there is other sets of a many larger number of projects outside there. And in fact, IMO is exploring a way of connecting these projects. In fact, there are some proposals coming, including from some member states. Why can't IMO try to connect these projects? In a way, we are currently, as we speak, discussing how could we play a role by bringing, or at least connect these projects, so there will be collaboration, cooperation among these projects. So certainly it is in our mind. Within IMO, yes, very much possible. We are trying it, and we will do it. But even outside IMO, we will find a way how we can connect them. And one of the immediate plan is to organize this Maritime Innovation Forum to bring all the initiatives together. But even before that, we may have another opportunity to bring them together as a network of projects, something that we are currently exploring. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you very much, Jose. So we'll move to the next question now. We have a question for Caribbean. So, Captain, could you explain how MTCC Caribbean will use the data collected to benefit the region? So I think we heard a little bit about the establishing baselines in the region, but can you give some practical examples of how stakeholders in the region will actually benefit from the data that's being collected?
Thank you, Anton, and a very relevant question. I hope you can hear me loud and clear, right? Great. So, as you know that we have established baselines on fuel consumption, baselines on uptake of technology, the existing technology used by vessels. And along with this, under Pilot Project 2, we created an online portal, basically a repository of all the data and analysis of the results. So we are in the process where the data is shared with our existing maritime administrations as our stakeholders. We have an established energy efficiency focal point in all of our 16 maritime administrations. So they will have access to this data. Along with that, data will also be shared with the industry which participated with us in providing this data, like a few ports within the Caribbean and one major shipping line. And as we move forward, if there is a request to share such data, which we can process case by case basis as what kind of data is required and how we can help in furthering the objectives of the GMN project. So it all depends where the request is coming from, but we are open to share the data depending upon how it will help us in achieving our objectives.
Great. Thank you very much, Captain. We'll move to our next question then, and we have a question for MTCC Africa. It's asking, have you targeted specific countries in the region, or does the MTCC cover the whole geographic scope of Africa?
Thank you, Anton, for that question. Very interesting question, actually. So for the African region, our aim is to ensure that we cover the entire continent. We have been having a bit of challenge, but currently we are working with 42 African countries. And how we manage to consider all these countries in our forecast is that we have focal points in the various geographical regions. We have focal points in the north, in the south, in the east, and in the west. And in this way, we also have a special caucus of focal point committee, and it helps us disseminate our programs in the event that specific countries need technical assistance, The focal points are able to link us to the countries that need to be put into consideration. Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lydia. We've had another question come in. So what is the plan to sustain the NTCCs beyond the life of the GMN project? Is it the centres working towards sustainability or as a collective network of NTCCs? And how are the established NTCCs envisioned to contribute to future projects in support of the GHG strategy? And one more final question, how will Latin America effort, I presume that's the NTCC Latin America effort, be captured? Multiple questions within there. Jose, I think there's a few questions there which I can allocate to you, but there's also a few which I can certainly have a go at answering. So in terms of the sustainability question, I think, Petra touched on this during her presentation. The intention in the future is that instead of having a single source of income, which at the moment is the EU, the plan for the NTCCs in the future is that we have multiple revenue streams. So there will be, for example, a much greater emphasis on funds that can be generated by the NTCCs themselves. So all of the NTCCs have developed business plans for sustainability. And another point that Petra highlighted in her presentation is, after 4 years of operations, the NTCCs have very unique services that they can provide in the region. And they have the foundation for establishing themselves within the region on their own initiative in terms of being able to raise funds. There is also the possibility of reaching out to donors such as the EU, or donors that are looking specifically at the kind of regional level. There's also the potential to be able to channel funds from IMO through a GHG trust fund. There is the potential that funds from that might be allocated to NTCCs. So there's different areas where funds might be generated. All of the NTCCs are now taking steps to become more sustainable. As I said, they've developed plans. And another important point to emphasize is that the NTCCs are not working in isolation. Part of the question was talking about the collective network. The NTCCs have their own terms of reference, separate from IMO or EU. The NTCCs are committed to working together. And what that means practically is that they've established their own governance mechanism, and they're collaborating on issues such as communication and sustainability promotion. So already, the network is there. There's been a lot of collaboration also in terms of the technical work, crossover in terms of the pilot project work. So the network is there, it's established. The plans for sustainability are there. And, we're doing everything we can at this stage while we're still under the support of the EU to make sure that NTCCs can continue long into the future. Jose, I'm not sure if you want to add any more to
that. Anton, well, I think you have answered on sustainability part of it, and maybe I can try to answer on the role of MTCCs envisioned to support the IMO GHG strategy. Very good question. In fact, that is exactly the vision IMO had when it captured the role of MTCCs in the GHG strategy itself. If you look in the text of the GHG strategy, you would actually see a reference to MTCCs and its role in support of the strategy. So there is an expectation within the strategy of the role. Now, how do we practically do that? We are still the project is still ongoing, and we are hoping that sustainability will be achieved, and the role of MTCC will still continue to be there, and the expectations as well. We will try as much as possible to connect our future projects to MTCC, especially with respect to the regional level initiatives. There is a role MTCC would be able to play. As you know, that IMO also has internal programs such as IMO Integrated Technical Cooperation Program, which we implement activities, and there might be possibility that MTCC's help and assistance could be utilized to implement those activities as well. So we will continue to explore. We are at the beginning stages. 3 years is not a long period of time for an entity to establish and run, and in that sense, MTCC have done an excellent job of establishing themselves in such a short period of time, building the infrastructure, building the manpower, etc., etc. So I think they are just beginning to slowly walk, and hopefully they'll be able to run fast. And that's the time we're expecting the role of MTCCs in the GHG strategy. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jose. We received another question, which I think I can direct to Captain Singh and also Lydia. So with the new challenges presented by COVID-19, how will MTCCs mitigate limitations for the transfer of energy efficiency technology and best practices at regional level? So Lydia, perhaps I can direct that to you first.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I've divided it into 2 parts. So the first part is that as MTCC Africa, we are looking into trying to put into consideration regional remote events, whereby in the event we cannot have capacity building workshops where members are present in the physical, we could have virtual workshops, and then we can have ideas that will be discussed, produced into report form, and also highlighted in our website. That is one thing that we are looking into. With regard to the energy efficiency technology and best practices as well, we are working very closely with the focal points through the focal points coordinators. And in turn, the focal point coordinators are working very closely with their respective port authorities and maritime administrations. In Kenya, we work very closely with Kenya Maritime Authority, Kenya Ports Authority. We have experts who are part of MTCC, who are also full-time employees of the said institutions. Therefore, they give us some idea as to some of the stopgap measures that they have put in place. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, with the region, we work closely with the focal points who are also from the same cadre of administration. The challenge is that not very many port authorities have had a solid plan, so they are still they're still scratching the surface to see how best they can transfer, how best they can mitigate the limitations of the energy efficiency technology. It's almost a wait and see situation, but there is light at the end of the tunnel, and I would say in the next 2-3 months, they should be able to have some templates of the way forward that they are looking into.
That's great. Thank you, Lydia. Thank you. Captain Singh?
Okay, thank you, Anton. And again, very relevant question. I would say our approach as MTCC Caribbean, we know we have the challenges in the region, which were existing for, as Lydia highlighted, for energy efficiency uptake or technology uptake. And then we got hit by COVID. But here in Caribbean, specifically within the MTCC, we see this not as a challenge, but an opportunity. Because COVID somewhere has forced all our industry stakeholders, or means everyone, to think over their strategies and approach towards the business. And this provides a perfect opportunity for us to push objectives of GMN and MTCC through to them. So when it comes to action, we within our objectives, we are bound to provide a platform for both technology providers and technology adopters, and as in our upcoming workshop in first week of August, which is on 6th and 7th. We will again have some representatives from within the industry and the associations of the various technologies who will share the solutions which are available. And further, depending as we establish the project further, we will look into more relevant pilots which are coming out of the need of the industry, because as we know, the previous pilots, we had a mandate to perform them in a certain way. But I think the one major boost to technology transfer and uptake would be where these projects are pushed by the industry itself, and we align our pilots to what is the actual need of the industry. So that will happen. So we see this as an opportunity, not as an obstacle.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Captain. I'm afraid that we've run out of time, so it just remains for me to thank the speakers and panelists for their great contributions. Thank you very, very much. And I'd also like to thank the audience for your participation and for the many questions that were submitted. So thank you very much for that. We hope that you found the webinar interesting, and if you'd like to find out more, then of course you can visit our website at gmn.imo.org, or you can send an email to the GMN team. The email address is gmn@imo.org. So thank you once again, and goodbye, and wishing you all a very nice day. Thank you very much.